Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, I want to talk to you about comparisons and competition in music and in ukulele playing, and just some off the top of my head thoughts regarding these things, because they can be kind of toxic and a bad mindset. Want to give you my thoughts on those, help you hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls that come with them, and move along together. Before we do that, want to remind you that the Live Ukulele podcast and liveukulele.com is supported by listeners and resource users like yourself. If you like the content that I produce, please go to liveukulele.com/store. Check out some of the premium teaching and learning resources that I provide there. Those are things that help directly support the free content that I produce. All of your support is greatly appreciated. With that, let's get into the episode and talk story. Comparisons in music are inevitable. This is just one way we kind of interpret and perceive the world and understand what we are experiencing, and to kind of get a grasp on it. We compare it to other things. Does this person play the ukulele like this person? Or do these strings sound as good as these strings? It helps us gauge things in kind of an analytical way. But what comparisons do, and on the surface, this is fine. And in a lot of situations, this is fine. You're going to compare your favorite ukulele player to your other favorite ukulele player and oh, this is how they're different. This is how they're the same. They play different ukuleles, but they play this same song. That sort of a thing. That's just normal. That is what you might expect. But something that I notice and I see and that really disturbs me about comparisons is when they become self-comparisons. The ukulele community came about because of inclusion and community and the relative easy access of the ukulele as a group instrument. Everybody could play it pretty quickly. They could learn a C chord, F chord, G7 chord, boom, be playing a song with their friends. And that openness is really a lot of the appeal. But there will be times in your playing career. It's probably not a career for most of you out there. It's probably just for enjoyment, as it well should be. But we'll call it that, a playing career. There will be times in your playing career where you're going to think comparative thoughts that put your skills against your peers or people that you want to play like. And these comparisons are less helpful because they tend to be a little bit demoralizing, and they make you feel like you're never going to measure up. You're never going to succeed in a way that will make you content with what you are able to play. And so it should be avoided at all costs, because I think especially with the advent of the web and the access everybody has to videos and performances and things that they can see, it's easy to feel like, well, everybody can play better than me. Those sorts of attitudes. And the main takeaway that I want to provide for this episode and this thought process that I have is that music is for enjoyment. Music is for enjoyment. It doesn't matter what form it is. It doesn't matter how well you play it, how poorly you play it. As long as you are enjoying it, it is doing its job. And so the beauty of playing the ukulele is that there's a very low barrier to entry, and anybody can jump in and play it and find enjoyment in the instrument. It's when you start to try and measure yourself up against others that problems arise. You might get discouraged, those kinds of things. if we go back and you think back to a time before music was published, back when there weren't records to sell, before the invention of the phonograph and all those old technologies that allowed music to be preserved and recorded and then broadcast at a later time, music was just live. That's all it was. It was the live experience of being in a room with somebody playing music or playing the music yourself. I think a lot of us can relate or think back to a time when it was more common for folks just to play music in general, not just ukulele, but like there was a piano in the house and grandma played or mom played or whoever. It was a lot more normal for folks just to play music, not because they were good, but just because it's like that's what everybody did on Sundays. They gathered around the piano and they sang some songs or whatever it might have been. There was a deeper connection to the music because there was nothing to compare yourself to. There weren't like professional musicians in the sense that we know today. You might go see somebody at a concert hall or enjoy the symphony when it came to town. That was a thing. But that was like a one-off special treat. You weren't constantly being bombarded by people who were marketed as rock stars, as the best. Because if people are still playing music for their own enjoyment and getting that musical satisfaction themselves, they're less likely to buy records. I've certainly noticed that with myself, is that over the years as I've played music more and more, I don't really buy records. I don't buy albums or listen to a whole lot of new music and just like listen to new music for the sake of that musical enjoyment, because I'm kind of providing that for myself in my life at this point. And if I'm not buying records, the record people are not making money, and this whole kind of business approach that came to music after recordings were invented and brought to the table. And I think that sort of the mindset that, well, these people are on the record, they're professionals, they're good at music, implied that everybody who wasn't that, who didn't have a record deal, wasn't on the album, they were bad at music and they shouldn't play music. And it seems like that's been pervasive way up until now and probably will continue beyond now. And that the ukulele community is a small bit of rebellion, if you will, in kind of pushing back against that big business music. Because when you go to a Kani Kapila, you go to your ukulele group, it's a chance to find enjoyment in the music without needing to buy a record, without needing to be a rock star, without needing to be vetted as a professional musician. It's yours to take. It's yours to have. It doesn't need to be good. If you're having a good time, it is good. That's all that matters. And so that's what I want to encourage, is that if you're having negative thoughts about your playing or feel like you need to be better or you need to, oh, I'm not practicing enough, I need to do XYZ in order to become a better player. Think about why. Is being a better player going to better serve your enjoyment of the music? Yes, it is satisfying to be able to execute music at a higher level and to maybe think something in your mind or hear something in your mind's ear and then just be able to play it on the instrument because you have great facility. That is true. But not being able to do that, does that mean that you can't enjoy music? Absolutely not, because there are many, many people who do enjoy music at a very basic level. They're just over the moon thrilled to be able to strum C, F, and G7, play some of their favorite songs with their friends, and just have a grand old time. And that's all they ever do. That's all they ever need to be comfortable with, because that brings them sufficient enjoyment. So don't get caught in the trap of thinking that you need to be better in order to enjoy music more. Some of the happiest people I have ever seen in my life are the folks who are just learning. They're like flying off the rails because they are not maybe technically skillful, but they are there having the most fun of their lives, just playing music with a group, being able to express that and find that enjoyment. And that's infectious. That is what makes it great for everybody else, is if somebody is really having the time of their life and enjoying it, that kind of cascades down, and then everybody sees that. Everybody gets excited. It's like, right, this here is great. It's great because we feel that it's great, not because somebody has sanctioned it as a lovely album that we should be listening to or anything like that. This is ours in this moment to enjoy and to appreciate. And I was really reminded of this when I went to Uncle George's workshop this year, because there's a Kani Kapila most nights at the workshop, and we sit for a couple of hours and we strum through songs, and the students can practice some of what they learned during the day at the Kani Kapila. We learn these beautiful Hawaiian songs, and it's a chance for everybody to just kind of be in the space and enjoy the music together. And there was one student who chose a song and wanted to lead a song, and she lost her way multiple times and played the wrong chords and sang the wrong words, but had the biggest smile and was having a great time, could hardly sing because she was laughing so hard, having the time of her life. And as a side effect of that, it kind of cascaded down to the rest of us, and all of us, even us, like instructor, quote, musicians who are there as the instructors at the workshop, we had a great time because she was having such a great time. And that song became one of the more memorable moments at the workshop because there was just so much joy in the fact that we were just making that music for, at whatever level it was, the wrong chords, nobody knew what was going on, nobody knew where the words were supposed to go. But it was okay because we were having a great experience as a human community in that moment and in that space. So bottom line is, don't compare yourself to others. Try and just do what pleases you in music. Find what really does it for you and practice things and play music in that realm. Don't try and be anything. Just play your music and let it be enjoyable. I know for myself, over the past few years, I've gotten to a point where I'm mostly satisfied with my playing. I can express most of the things that I want to express in either on the fly live or after a try or two. I can figure out what it is that I want to play and then be able to play it. And I've gotten to the point where I don't necessarily practice so much because my enjoyment is not really going to increase at this point. I don't think if I had more facility or technical ability. The enjoyment now is in just playing the music and trying to capture the music as wholesomely and in a heartfelt way as possible. And so I think that wherever that last stop is for folks and how much they want to push their playing abilities, it's going to differ between, from person to person. And for me, I've kind of gotten to that point, and it's just playing music for the enjoyment. And now I just play the songs without needing to exceed them greatly with my technical ability. And I think that is the place to be, is to be finding music that you love to play and just being satisfied with being able to play it where you're at. Okay, this is a happy place for me. I'm able to play the music that I want to play. And, for everybody, that's going to be different. If just C, F, and G7 and a chalang-a-lang strum is what makes you feel like you're part of the music and you're satisfied with that and you have the time of your life every time you go to your ukulele club, that's wonderful. That's fabulous. Don't feel like you need to push yourself to move along and be something that maybe the general population would think that you should be. Like, oh, you're an ukulele player? Can you play a Bach song on your ukulele? It's like, if that's not your jam, who cares? It's not anybody's business what your musical enjoyment is. So always make sure that your improvement and your efforts to become a better musician are rooted in the want to be able to enjoy music better. I think it's really easy to, especially for young people who are maybe picking up the ukulele, to want to be able to shred faster than the next guy, or to play flashier than that other guy they saw on YouTube, or make it kind of a competition. I know that when I was younger, it was certainly a little bit like this, where like, oh, they can do that, I'm going to learn how to do that, and then make sure I can do that too, so that, I can keep up with them. And it was a little bit detached from enjoyment of the music at that point. It was just, I want to be able to do that so that I can do that too, kind of a thing. And it was harder to see the trees for the forest, or whatever the saying is, and be able to just appreciate the music as the enjoyment, as the end goal, as opposed to, I'm going to learn to shred up one side and down the other of this song so I can do that. Right? There's a fine line between practicing something and working on something to improve, so that you can express the music better and find greater satisfaction and enjoyment in that. And there is the other side of the coin, where you are doing that just so that you are a better player than the guy who's sitting next to you, which has zero relevance to anything in music, really. Because here is the secret that a lot of people will not tell you. And that is, a lot of the music that you know and love, and some of the most heartfelt music that you know, was not played by the most technically proficient musicians. Right? A lot of the very best Hawaiian music that we listen to today, and we look back and like, wow, that was an amazing album. What an amazing time. They had such a great sound. They were proficient, and they were able to achieve the musical goals that they had. But by perhaps today's standard, maybe they weren't as technically proficient as you would have thought. They had the music inside them, and they expressed it in such a way that it really had a vibe, and it was really heartfelt, and it really projected itself very well. Which is to say that some of the best music that I've heard people play on the ukulele, it's not necessarily coming from super technically proficient people. You can play music and express music that is just as meaningful, even if you don't have super duper chops. If you are working on learning a piece, and you study the piece and you get really comfortable with it, and you're able to play it and find the enjoyment in it and express yourself through that music, a lot of times that's going to come across as more musical and more lovely than somebody who is just kind of skipping along, and that just happens to be a place where they've touched on their way to the next thing, or on their way to becoming a faster shredder or a more technical player. Which is also why I think that as musicians mature, they tend to play less and less flashy, because they realize that the expression and the meaning in the music is less about being able to play technically amazing things, and more about just being able to emote and create that feel inside of the music. So if you must compete, keep it to yourself, because it doesn't do anybody else any good. That is a you problem if you want to feel like competing, because that is not something that is necessary to playing good music whatsoever. It's all about just finding enjoyment for yourself. If you live way out in the sticks and you just strum your ukulele for your cat and your dog on the porch as you look out on the Great Plains for 1,000 miles where there's nobody, and that is your enjoyment, that's wonderful. You shouldn't be going for anything more than that. Just, play to a place where you are satisfied and, improve in what is going to be able to increase that satisfaction or that enjoyment. If you don't like studying or practicing a certain thing and you don't find that it adds to the enjoyment, don't do it. I find that the best work that I do is when I'm like in awe of the music and like surprised by what I discover or excited by what I discover or like, oh wow, I had no idea I had that in me or I could figure that out or I've never played those kinds of notes together before. That's interesting. And that's where some of the enjoyment comes from. But it's not necessarily coming from a place of, I want to be able to play better than the next guy, or the next guy doesn't have these notes, so I'm going to try and find out where they're at. That is not the mindset to approach it with. Always try and just approach it from like, wow, music's amazing. This is fun. I'm having a great time. I am enjoying this. If you can find that and be able to thread the needle between practice and enjoyment, then you are really on the right track. Because I think that practice gets a bad rap. Folks don't like to practice because it's boring and it's hard and it's not enjoyable. But that is the number one problem, is you got to figure out how to make practice enjoyable. How do you apply the things that you are learning or trying to improve at? How do you incorporate those in an enjoyable way? Once you figure out how to do that, then practice is no longer a drag. You can just plow through it because it's fun and you're like, oh, wow, check this out. Oh, this is fun. Get there and you will be able to improve a lot easier and a lot faster because you're not going to be dragging your feet about it. And I can't tell you what that is, how to make it enjoyable for yourself, but keep in mind that there are no rules about how to improve at music. Everybody's going to follow a slightly different path and arrive at the destination in a little bit different way. And, definitely try, and if you're working with a teacher who is encouraging you to practice on a certain kind of schedule or something, you need to, maybe it's a schedule that you're stoked about, and as you sit down to play, you're like looking forward to it and you're into it and it's enjoyable. But if you are working with a teacher and you don't find that, you find that you're kind of like resenting the practice, not wanting to practice, then it would be good to probably have a conversation with them and let them know that, you want me to work on these things and I want to improve at these things, but I'm not finding it enjoyable. Can we brainstorm together ways that would make it enjoyable for me? Right? How can I bring interest to this that is going to spark my enthusiasm? That's what I would want my student to do with me. It's like, hey, Brad, we've been working on this thing and you told me to practice this, but it's just really not doing it for me. I feel like this is something I still want to learn, but can we think of a different way to implement it where it's a little bit more enjoyable for me or more musical? And together, the teacher and the student can discover what that might be. And if the teacher doesn't want to work with you on that, I was like, nope, that's the way it is. Then you have to decide if that is something you want to follow through with, continue with, or if you want to maybe look for somebody who would be a little bit more accommodating. Because the teacher-student relationship is just that. It is a relationship. And it's something that you build and you work on. And it's dynamic. It moves around. Sometimes it's going to be good. Sometimes it's going to be not so good. But certainly keeping the improvement and the practice part of music engaging and interesting is one of the biggest oversights of music, I think, for the most part, because you end up with kids who are, learning piano. I was a kid learning piano who I didn't hate it. I never hated it, but I went to my piano lesson every week and I learned the stuff and I went home and I practiced so I could get the right number of gold stars in my practice book. And that was kind of it. I was never inspired beyond that to practice more and play more. And I really appreciate my folks not pushing me to really do more. It's like, this is your deal. If you want to be able to work on this and improve at it, you have to practice. That's just the way it is. And if I was a much more mature 8 or 9-year-old kid, however old I was, I would have maybe sat down with my teacher and thought about what I wanted to do with music, why I was there, and what my goals were, and how I could ask her to like connect the dots between, okay, I'm here and I'm practicing these things, but it's not super enjoyable because I don't see I don't see where it leads. It's just like, here's the song this week, or here's the scale practice this week. And I think having that roadmap and the kind of knowing where we were going, that would have helped increase the enjoyment, kind of in hindsight and looking back on that. And so if you're finding that you're playing and, it was enjoyable, but now you're just kind of like, I don't know, slogging along, practicing things, try and figure out a way to engage that roadmap so that you can see where you're going, and also along the way, figure out ways to make what you're practicing and what you're working on more enjoyable, more relevant, more musical, perhaps. But like I said, it really depends, and it's different for everybody. So quick recap. Music should be fun. If you're not enjoying it, you're doing it wrong. And if you have to compete, keep it to yourself. Those are my 2 takeaways, the Cliff Notes version of this little podcast episode. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Live Ukulele podcast. It is published on the 1st and 3rd Saturdays of every month. That is 2 episodes per month that you can get some ukulele radio goodness. Please subscribe to the podcast if you are so inclined on your favorite podcast service so that you don't miss an episode. It also helps with the rankings and all that good stuff, I am told. Don't forget to check out liveukulele.com for more free resources and also some premium resources, which are put together to be the very best thing that you can spend your money on to learn how to play ukulele in a certain style or with a certain approach and concept overview. Go check those out to support what I'm doing here. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Brad Bordessa. Aloha.